The house was empty but not silent. There was a strange kind of sound in the air. The creaking of wood, the crackle of time that seemed to have settled into the corners like dust. On the living room floor, barefoot footprints stopped halfway, as if someone had decided to vanish mid-step. A half-open window let the wind through, making the curtains sway slowly and rhythmically, like the movement of a hanged body. It was a scene of absence with the weight of presence, and even after all this time, the air still smelled like him. She came back that night the way someone returns to the scene of an unresolved accident. Her hands trembled before even touching the doorknob, and her heart seemed to want to walk back every step she had taken. But she walked in, as if challenging a ghost she herself had created. Time hadn't taken everything. The photos were still on the wall, the books still stacked the same way, and in the bathroom cabinet there was still a bottle of perfume, the same one she used to wear back when she believed love and pain were the same thing. Outside, the world moved fast. Cars, phones, dinner plans made through apps, disposable relationships wrapped in 15-second stories. But inside, in that space swallowed by the past, time had been smothered by memories that refused to die. The house hadn't aged. It had simply stopped. Like her. Like the feeling that, against all logic, still insisted on bleeding. She knew the way by heart. She could walk it with her eyes closed, avoiding the table with the broken leg, stepping around the invisible shards of nights shattered in screams and silence. Every corner of that house was a scar, alive, pulsing, covered in promises whispered softly and apologies dressed as affection. In the kitchen, his chair was still slightly pulled out from the table, a detail she noticed without meaning to, as if the place was still waiting for him, as if the house had a memory of its own, complicit in the same mistakes she couldn't stop repeating. And maybe it did. Maybe the walls witnessed what the eyes refused to see. Maybe the echo of arguments still vibrated between the bricks. Maybe that's why, even knowing how much it hurt, she still came back. Memory is a sweet poison. In moments when the pain quiets down, it dresses suffering in nostalgia. It makes everything seem bearable. Worse, it makes it seem worth it. Because deep down, she still clung to the good moments as if they could erase the bad ones. She remembered the laughter before the outbursts, the looks that came before the control. He knew exactly how to touch her in a way that would make her go silent, and she mistook that for care. She confused the absence of violence with the presence of love, and when it hurt, because it always did, she blamed herself. Thought maybe she was overreacting. Maybe she was asking for too much. The landline phone in the living room, that old one nobody used anymore, rang. She turned instinctively, but no one was there. The phone wasn't even plugged in. It hadn't been for years. But the sound still echoed in her mind. Just like that night she waited for an apology that never came. She sat on the couch, listening to the ticking of the clock, wishing each second would be a chance for him to change. But he didn't. And she stayed. The lights in the house flickered as she walked down the hallway, as if the place were breathing. Each step awakened memories that had only been sleeping on the surface. The black dress she wore at that party where he deliberately ignored her, the sound of the door slamming when she tried to leave and he locked it. The silence after the first, "I'm sorry, it's just that I love you too much." That phrase that should have sounded like redemption, but was really the start of another cycle. She reached the bedroom. The mirror was still there, covered by a white sheet like a grief never grieved. She pulled it off gently, as if uncovering a body. The reflection showed a face she barely recognized. Different hair, dimmer eyes, an expression that mixed exhaustion with resistance. She wasn't the same anymore. But she wasn't someone else yet either. She was in between, in that gray zone where people live when they do not know whether to move on or turn back. Flashbacks flooded in. The first time he complimented her, the first time he belittled her. The same look, the same tone of voice. The difference was the subtle poison that grew between one phrase and the next. and she learned to live with it, to dim her own light so as not to disturb, to walk softly, to smile with fear, and most of all, to wait. Wait for him to fall asleep so she could cry. Wait for tomorrow to be different. Wait for the love she felt to be enough for both. But it never was, because he only loved himself. And her presence was just a mirror, a projection of the image he wanted to maintain. She sat on the edge of the bed, that same bed where she had so often pretended to sleep just to avoid a fight, where she gave in so many times to avoid being left, where she cried silently so as not to disturb his comfort. How many times had she betrayed herself in the name of a peace that never came? Her heart was pounding, but it wasn't love. It was fear. Fear of being there again. Fear of realizing that some part of her still wanted to believe, that maybe he had changed, that maybe love, the love she invented, was still somewhere in there. But it wasn't. There was no one there anymore. There never really was. Real love doesn't paralyze. It sets you free. It embraces without suffocating. It cares without manipulating. And she was, for the first time, beginning to understand that. Not through self-help quotes, not from repeated advice, but from exhaustion. From having bled so much there was no more pain, only emptiness. She stood up, took the house key still hanging beside the door, put it in her pocket like someone closing a chapter. Before leaving, she looked around one last time. The objects, the furniture, the memories. Everything was still in the same place. Except her. Outside, the sky was starting to darken. The streets glowed with a cold yellow from the streetlights. The air was thick, as if it were raining inside. She walked without a set destination, but with a newfound certainty. She wouldn't come back. Not because she no longer felt, but because, for the first time, she felt something for herself. Deep down, she knew. She had always known. That loving someone who hurts you is like drinking poison, hoping to quench your thirst. And even if the longing screamed, even if the good moments tried to seduce her memory, there was a truth she could no longer ignore. Someone who truly loves you doesn't make you beg for peace. And there, on that wet sidewalk, with her hair tousled by the wind and her heart still in pieces, she finally understood. True love begins when you stop going back to where you were destroyed. And maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of her healing. If this touched you in any way, leave a comment below. Maybe your story will help someone else not go back too.